Hello, it's Regina. Welcome back to my haunted library. Today I'm doing an AuthorTube update, and it does involve a little reading, so that could be BookTube as well. But I finally finished my book, Cousin B. It's done. It's in print. It's on Kindle. I'll link it below. It's not a long book, but it took me long enough to finish it. And when I say finish it, I mean editing it. So my process is I do all my own editing, and I really can't afford to hire an editor because I don't make enough sales on my books. I mean, that's a goal, but I do it all myself. And so I need to get a little distance from it because in order to have fresh eyes, you need to kind of get away from it. So I actually wrote this last summer, and it was on Wattpad for a while. I took it down from that site, but I got a lot of good feedback. So like Wattpad's a great, almost like a beta reader if you don't have them. You get responses to your work. And what this story is, it's kind of an homage to Daphne du Maurier's My Cousin Rachel. I called it Cousin B, being a little cheeky there. It has a similar, not plot really, but it has a similar premise where a new person comes into the household and wreaks havoc, and there are a lot of suspicions about this person. So it is a young adult mystery. It has a gothic kind of feel to it. It's not period, it's modern, but it takes place in an old house, and it's about teenagers. So I think young adult audiences would enjoy it, but adults as well. So I put it up there, and already I got my first review, and it was a positive one, so I was happy to see that. So it's really nice when someone you don't know validates your book. So that's Cousin B. I'm pretty proud of this story, actually. I'd like to do and I liked having a physical book. I don't sell a lot of print books, but I do like having the physical book. My goal with this is not really a series of the same characters, but like a series of the same kind of thematic stories. So dark, gothic, modern, for teens, and about this size. This is like 140 something pages. And the person who reviewed it today did say that it was a page turner, so yes. That is what my goal is every time I write. I try to, I'm not the best at metaphors, and I don't have the most lyrical turns of phrases, but I know how to structure a good twist and a good page turner. So when I get that back from a reviewer, that makes me feel good. That makes me feel like my job was done. So it's a satisfying feeling to finish something and clear the deck and move on. And then also, hopefully I will have it done this week because I'm just waiting for the cover to get finished. Maybe if the cover's done by the time I put this up, I'll put it right there. So I have a collection of short stories called Demons Within. And these are short stories. I mean, it's not that long. It's about 100 pages. These are all the short stories that I've written probably in the past couple of years that I just kept in a folder. I had put some on Wattpad. I took them down. I had entered some into some writing anthologies, like small press publishing. I have a few of those that got published, and then the time period was over for that. So I'm like, well, what am I going to do with all these short stories? I'll put them in a volume and just put them out there. Now, I know short stories don't sell very well. Horror short stories maybe do a little better. I buy horror short story anthologies, so who knows? I'm going to put it out there. I do have some stories in this that I'm super proud of, and they're adult. They're not for kids. So it's a little more of my darker side. So that's called Demons Within, and that will be available probably this week on Amazon and Kindle. I have some really twisted stories in there. And, it's funny because I went back and I was looking for putting the stories together and kind of how I was going to organize them. And I had some longer ones, and I had some that were like flash fiction pieces. And I found a short story that I had written kind of when I first started taking fiction writing seriously. I had been writing screenplays for over 10 years. And this was like a kind of a breaking into new ground for me. So there was this one story that I had written that at the time I felt very passionately about, and I had put it out to a couple different publications, and it was rejected, and I remember feeling kind of bad about it. But now that I'm reading it, and this was probably 7 years ago when I started writing fiction, And I wrote this, and now I'm reading it, and I was editing it yesterday, and I was like, oh, it's terrible. This is not even, this is barely literate. But I guess my point is, I saw that I've grown as a writer, and that's a good feeling too. So I spent a few hours just not rewriting the whole thing, but kind of shaping it up. It's still not my strongest story, but I stuck it in there anyway. I know that I am writing a lot better now. So I guess my point in mentioning this is that you do grow as a writer, and it's something that you just have to keep working on. And the more you do it, the better you get at it. So I do believe in clearing the decks and taking all this dross that's kind of been collecting and try to shape it into something that is good enough to put out there, something that you would be proud of. So that's what I have to say about that. And then I also want to talk about 2 books that I read. I mean, I could count this as part of Nonfiction November, right? And both have to do with writing. One is a guy that I'm sure a lot of you people on YouTube know, Derek Murphy. He's all over the place. He's got all kinds of content. Some of it, some very useful stuff. I had, it's funny, I just talk about Derek Murphy a little bit. Maybe like a year and a half ago, I wrote a blog, I'll link it below, about called The Tao of Writing Gurus, my Tao, because I was working and I would be working at home on something and just have my headphones on, and I would be listening to different YouTube videos, and I listened to a lot of Derek's, and then there was this other guy on YouTube called Cy Porter, C-Y Porter. I'll link both of them below. They're like polar opposites of each other in like their messages to the writer, where Derek Murphy's message is very much like write to market and use tropes and figure out your niche and do this and do that, and that's very useful to a point. And Cy Porter has a whole playlist about how to write fiction that really goes deep, and he's kind of like Mr. Rogers. He's really sweet and calming and soothing to that artistic soul, where that the art and commerce is always kind of like this, and I'm always trying to figure out that balance too. So I just thought I'd mention that. And Cy Porter, I don't know, he doesn't seem to be on YouTube anymore. I tried to find him on Facebook. He's kind of disappeared. I hope that he's off like writing his books and very happy, because he is a really nice guy. At least his persona on YouTube is really nice. And I feel like Derek is too. I think Derek's very honest. He's a little scattershot with some of this stuff, but he's trying to figure it out too and make a buck. You can't blame him for that. But anyway, I read his book, Guerilla Publishing, Dangerously Effective Writing and Book Marketing Strategies. And then I read, I wish I wrote this because it's very popular. I read Write to Market, Deliver a Book That Sells by Chris Fox. Chris Fox, I've seen him on like the Creative Pen, I think it's called, Joanna Penn. And she's very sweet, and she always has these people on. And his book is, the message between both of those books were pretty much the same. I say if you had to choose one, sorry Derek, but I would go with Chris Fox's only because it's a little more concise. Derek's is a little rambling. But the message is the same. It's basically how to find your niche in the Amazon jungle and to put your book there so it will be discovered. Because I think all of us who are writing, we want our books to be read. Bought would be nice too, and read and maybe make a little money. That would be cool. So these books are really geared on how to go about doing that. And it's very useful. It's very useful information. And in fact, I used it when I was putting Cousin B on. I found a niche, and it was spiking this morning, and I was like in the 200 ranking, about 200 for that particular niche. So yeah, it works, and I want to know more about this. I'm not a good salesperson and never have been. I think that's true for a lot of creative people. So there is a resistance to that I'm working hard to overcome, because it's just common sense. You want to try to get your book out there. Talking about Cy Porter. So I did buy his book, and I'm going to put it right here. I forget what it's called because I didn't read it, and I'll tell you why. It came in a print form. It was very small, like, thin, but it was in like a play version or like a screenplay. It's a very tough sell to get people to read a play. I know that because my undergrad was in dramatic literature. Reading a play is tough. And the print was really small, and I read a couple of pages and I was really disoriented. I had no idea where I was. So I think that it might be brilliant, but like, he could use a little bit what Derek has, I guess is what I'm saying. And maybe Derek could use a little bit of what he has. It's like I said, it's a balance. So I think that, all of this information that you can learn about how to market your book and how to write to market, I think is true. I mean, I write in the genre, I don't really, I'm already like writing to market, I guess. I'm writing horror, which is a market, and I'm writing young adult, paranormal, which is a market, but I guess I need to find more of a niche because that's very flooded with other work. And if you're not ranking, no one's seeing your book. So I think that's important. The whole thing about using tropes, I agree with that too. And I do use tropes in my work. And all this stuff, you got to just, Cy Porter always said, relax into it. And that was the message she always gave. Just relax into it. I think that we all need to kind of relax into it and find our place in this confusing, jungle. But if you do want to take your work seriously, which I do, I mean, you have to think about getting it out there and getting it noticed and finding your reader, because it's a very satisfying feeling when you get a review like I did this morning where someone read your book. I put it up there yesterday, someone found it and read it in one sitting and was excited enough to write a review and give it 4 stars. And that made me feel good because I made that connection, not just because they spent $1.99 Kindle or read it for, Kindle Unlimited for free or whatever. It's that connection was made. There is always going to be that kind of, like I said, conflict between art and commerce. These different ideas are always kind of clashing. And sometimes when people are talking about like right to market, that can be, they're giving that message and you're kind of like, where's the passion for your writing? Like, what do you care about what this is? Like, where is this coming from? Where is this passion? Where's your heart and soul in this? Because I think that as a reader, you do connect with that, with a writer. You sense whether it's coming from a sincere place or not. And you respond to that. On the other hand, you don't want to be like that guy. Like, I remember, this is going back 20 years. I knew this guy in New York who was a little pretentious, let's say, but he was a writer. He was always working on some book, but he never finished anything. And this was like before like internet publishing. But I would always be like, hey, how's your book coming along? It's like, oh, it's not ready yet, and it's like it has to be perfect if I want to put my name on it. So just out of curiosity, when I finished reading these books, I remembered this guy and I looked him up on Goodreads. I'm not going to tell you what his name is, but he did self-publish one book. But it was like, it had like 3 reviews, which were probably like from his friends. There was a confusion about the genre. The cover was very esoteric. You couldn't really tell what was going on. Was it like, even the reviews that were nice were kind of confused about, well, what is this exactly? So, I don't know where he is in his career. He might have gotten like a real publishing deal and, whatever. But my point is that both of these things are important. And if you may need a little bit of one or the other, depending on what kind of person you are and like where you're at with it. So these are just my random thoughts after reading these books. I would recommend, Derek Murphy's book, you can pretty much glean everything in this book from watching his videos, but he does a lot of videos, so you might not want to do that. Chris Fox's book is more concise, but I have to say he does a lot of shameless self-promotion in his book, but maybe that's the name of the game. Anyway, that's all I have for today. Thanks for stopping by my haunted library, and I'll see you soon. Bye.